The wild places of the world have always called to the young and the brave. They whisper promises of discovery, of pushing one's own limits. On October 28, 1986, this spectacle would go down as a fatal disaster. For two siblings, Patricia Chelsea, aged 8, then a third-grade student, and her younger brother Edward Thomas, aged 6. Then in first grade, the call was impossible to ignore. They were not average kids, content with staying indoors. They lived for the outdoors, for the rugged landscapes of Utah. Their hearts were filled with an adventurous spirit that, honestly, many adults would envy. They saw the hills and canyons not as barriers, but as invitations. Every weekend was a new opportunity, a new map to unfold, a new peak to summit. This drive, this raw and beautiful curiosity, is the very essence of exploration. It's what pushes people to see what's over the next horizon. These two were more than just siblings. They were a team. Patricia, the elder, was the natural leader, always looking out for Edward. She was methodical, often the one carrying the compass and studying the lay of the land. Edward, younger but just as tough, was full of boundless energy and a fierce determination to keep up. Together, they had climbed small rock faces, navigated dusty trails, and learned the language of the rocks, mountains, and well, even more. Their parents encouraged this love for nature, teaching them to be respectful of its power but never to fear it. It was a philosophy built on preparedness and self-reliance. This wasn't about reckless abandon. It was about calculated adventure, about building skills and confidence with every step into the unknown. That summer of 1986 was filled with long, sun-drenched days perfect for their exploits. The heat of the Utah sun did little to deter them. Instead, it fueled their desire to seek out the cool, dark mysteries that lay hidden beneath the Earth's surface. Caving, or spelunking as it is often called, had become their latest fascination. It offered a different kind of challenge, a journey not up into the light, but down into the darkness. It was a world of silence, of strange rock formations, and of passages that had remained unseen for millennia. For two kids with imaginations as vast as the desert sky, the allure of exploring a real cave was the ultimate adventure, a true test of their courage and skill. Their spirit was a reflection of something deep within the human soul, the need to explore, to understand, to venture into places where others have not. It's a fire that has driven humanity since the dawn of time. It led ancestors across continents and oceans, and it's the same fire that now propels people towards the stars. In Patricia and Edward, this fire burned brightly. They weren't just looking for fun. They were on a quest for experience, for the kind of stories one cannot get from a book or a screen. They were living life, grabbing it with both hands, ready for whatever challenge the natural world would throw at them. Their journey was one of pure, unadulterated adventure. The target for their grandest adventure yet was a place with a deceptively playful name printed on their compass and GPS, Nutty Putty Cave. The elementary school siblings began their adventure. Located west of Utah Lake, it was well known among local explorers and youth groups. Its name came from the soft, brown clay found in many of its passages, a substance that resembled nutty putty. To the two children, an adventurous 8-year-old girl named Patricia Chelsea and her curious 6-year-old brother Edward Thomas, the name suggested fun and excitement, not danger. The cave was famous for its tight squeezes and winding tunnels, a natural labyrinth that promised a thrilling challenge. Patricia and Edward had heard stories from friends and had read local guides that described it as a perfect entry-level cave. It was a place where one could test one's nerve and learn the ropes of caving in a supposedly controlled environment. Their preparation was what they believed to be thorough for children their age. Patricia and Edward had studied hand-drawn maps that circulated among local cavers. These maps showed the main routes, the popular chambers, and the most famous tight spots, like the Big Slide and the Birth Canal. Patricia and Edward packed what they considered the essentials: sturdy flashlights with extra batteries, a small coil of rope, some water, and snacks. In their minds, Patricia and Edward were ready. The siblings had visualized the route, imagining themselves shimmying through the narrow sections and emerging into the larger caverns. The goal was simple: to navigate a known loop within the cave system and return to the surface, triumphant, with a story to tell. The cave itself is a geological marvel, a hydrothermal cave formed by hot water rising through cracks in the limestone. This process created a chaotic and unpredictable network of passages. Unlike caves carved by flowing water, which often have a logical downstream direction, hydrothermal caves are mazes. Passages can twist back on themselves, drop into sudden pits, or terminate in impassable blockages. The children's maps, while useful, could not possibly detail every single crack and crevice. The maps showed the highways of the cave, but not the countless side streets and dead-end alleys. This complex and confusing structure was a key element of the challenge, but also a hidden danger Patricia and Edward did not fully appreciate. On that fateful day in 1986, as Patricia and Edward stood at the entrance, a simple hole in the ground, the cool air that breathed out of the earth must have felt like a welcome relief from the Utah heat. It was the threshold between two worlds. Above was the familiar world of sun and sky. Below was a realm of perpetual night, a silent kingdom of rock and shadow. With a final check of their gear and a shared look of excitement, Patricia and Edward switched on their flashlights and descended. The siblings were not just entering a cave, they were stepping into a story, one they thought they knew the ending to. But the earth keeps its own secrets, and Nutty Putty Cave was about to reveal one of its darkest. The initial part of the exploration went exactly as planned. The beams of the explorers' flashlights cut through the absolute darkness, revealing the smooth, worn rock of the main passageway. Patricia Chelsea and Edward Thomas navigated the familiar sections they had read about, their confidence growing with every squeeze and crawl. The air was cool and damp, carrying the ancient, earthy smell of wet stone and clay. The explorers' voices echoed strangely in the confined spaces, a mix of excited chatter and instructions. "Watch your head here." Patricia, the 8-year-old girl, might have called out, her voice muffled by the rock. She said the next chamber, then waited for someone to reply. "I see the next chamber." Her 6-year-old brother Edward would reply, his smaller frame allowing him to scout ahead. The group was in their element, a team working in perfect sync. The critical moment came at a junction deep within the cave. The hand-drawn map the explorers relied on showed a fork. One path led to a well-known feature, a tight but manageable passage that looped back toward the main route. The other path was less clear on the map, marked simply as a smaller, unexplored tunnel. In the disorienting darkness where every shadow plays tricks on the eye and every passage looks similar, the explorers made a crucial error. Believing they were following the established loop, Patricia and Edward took the wrong turn. The two entered an offshoot, a section of the cave that was not on the map and was known to be dangerously unstable and tight. This new passage was immediately different. It was tighter, more awkward, and the walls felt rougher, less worn by the passage of other caverns. The easygoing adventure was starting to feel more like a struggle for Patricia and Edward. The two likely had a moment of hesitation. This didn't look like the path their friends had described, but the thought of turning back can be a difficult one for any explorer. The belief that the correct path is just a little further ahead, combined with a reluctance to admit a mistake, is a powerful, psychological trap. Patricia and Edward pushed on, convinced that this was just a more challenging part of the route, a section that would make their story even more impressive. The tunnel grew progressively narrow. What began as a hands and knees crawl soon became a belly crawl for the two explorers. Patricia and Edward were moving deeper into a part of the cave that was virtually uncharted, a place where the earth had not yet been fully mapped or tamed by human exploration. Each foot they gained took them further from safety and deeper into peril. The explorers' flashlights would have shown only a few feet ahead, revealing a seemingly endless tube of rock. The silence of the deep earth would have been broken only by their strained breathing and the scraping of their clothes on the stone. Patricia and Edward were well past the point of no return, though neither knew it yet. The point of crisis arrived suddenly and without mercy. While navigating a particularly tight section, Patricia Chelsea, the 8-year-old girl who was in the lead, found herself wedged. The passage, which had been just wide enough for her to squeeze through, constricted abruptly. It was an unforgiving, V-shaped trap. Patricia tried to push forward, thinking she could force her way through to a wider area, but the rock held her fast. Panic began to set in as Patricia realized she could not advance. Patricia then tried to reverse, to wriggle backward, but the angle of the passage and the pressure of the rock on her chest and back made it impossible. She was pinned. Her 6-year-old brother, Edward Thomas, just behind her, immediately understood the gravity of the situation. Edward's initial words would have been of encouragement. "It's okay. Just relax your body. Try to breathe slow." Edward tried to get a better position to help, but the tunnel was too narrow. He could not get a good grip on Patricia to pull her free. They both pushed and pulled, their movements frantic at first, then more deliberate as they tried to conserve energy. The smooth, cool rock had become a vice, and with every panicked breath Patricia took, her chest expanded, tightening the grip of the stone around her. The hope of a quick escape began to fade, replaced by a growing, terrifying dread. Minutes stretched into what must have felt like hours. The darkness, once a source of thrill, was now an oppressive, suffocating blanket. The only sounds were their own ragged breaths, the frantic beating of their hearts, and the useless scrape of fabric against rock. Edward made the heart-wrenching decision to leave his sister to get help. It was the only option left. Edward would have promised Patricia he would be back, that he would return with rescuers who could get her out. Backing out of the narrow passage himself was an arduous task, a desperate retreat through the maze they had so eagerly entered. Every inch Edward moved away from his trapped sister must have been agony. Left alone in the total blackness, pinned deep within the earth, Patricia's world shrank to the few inches of rock that held her captive. The silence would have been absolute, a heavy, profound emptiness that amplifies every fear. The cold of the rock would have started to seep into Patricia's body, a deep, numbing chill that drained strength and hope. In that moment, Patricia was utterly alone, waiting in the dark. It is a situation that tests the very limits of human endurance, a primal fear realized. Patricia was a girl who loved adventure, now caught in a trap laid by the very earth she had sought to explore. The wait for rescue had begun. Once Edward emerged from the cave entrance, his face streaked with dirt and tears, he raised the alarm. The call went out, and the response was immediate and massive. This was not a task for just a handful of people. It was honestly a full-scale emergency that required a small army. The local sheriff's department, search and rescue teams, and experienced cavers from across the state began to converge on Nutty Putty Cave. Word spread quickly through the tight-knit community, and volunteers, miners, construction workers, and ordinary citizens with specialized skills arrived to offer their help. The quiet hillside was transformed into a bustling command center, a beacon of hope against the encroaching night. The rescue operation was, well, a logistical nightmare. The first challenge was simply reaching Patricia and Edward. Rescuers had to navigate the same treacherous passages the siblings had, but they were burdened with heavy equipment: ropes, pulleys, air compressors, and medical supplies. The cave's tight constrictions meant that only the slimmest and most agile rescuers could even get close to the trapped 8-year-old Patricia and her 6-year-old brother, Edward. They worked in shifts, and the physical and emotional toll of crawling through those cold, dark tunnels was just immense. Every person who went down into that cave knew they were racing against the clock. Hypothermia, dehydration, and the psychological stress of being trapped were all imminent threats to the young siblings. For 56 whole agonizing hours, the rescue effort continued without pause. Rescuers managed to reach Patricia and Edward, establishing voice contact and providing them with what comfort they could. They were able to pass the siblings a small tube for water and another for fresh air, vital lifelines in their subterranean prison. The plan was to set up a complex system of ropes and pulleys to gently pull them free. But the physics of the situation were brutal. The angle of the passage and the immense friction of their bodies against the rock meant that every attempt to pull them created excruciating pressure. The rock itself was the enemy, unyielding and unforgiving. The teams worked with heroic determination. They tried lubricating the rock with oil. They considered chipping away at the stone, but the risk of a collapse or injuring Patricia and Edward with vibrations from power tools was just too great. Every strategy was met with a new heartbreaking obstacle. The rescuers, many of whom had children of their own, pushed themselves to the point of exhaustion. They were connected to Patricia and Edward by a voice in the dark, a thin thread of hope they desperately clung to. The entire operation was a testament to human ingenuity and compassion, a frantic battle of will and technology against the raw, indifferent power of geology. On the surface, a different kind of battle was being waged, a battle of emotion, faith, and agonizing patience. Patricia and Edward's family huddled together near the cave entrance, their world having shrunk to this single point on a dusty hillside. Every radio crackle, every person emerging from the dark hole, brought a surge of hope or a fresh wave of despair. They were surrounded by a community that had wrapped its arms around them. Neighbors, friends, and complete strangers brought food, blankets, and words of comfort. It was a silent, powerful vigil, a collective holding of breath as the hours ticked by. The raw, human drama playing out on the surface was as intense as the physical struggle happening below. The rescuers themselves were on an emotional roller coaster. Descending into the earth, they were focused professionals, driven by adrenaline and training. They spoke in code, managed equipment, and analyzed angles. But when they emerged back into the daylight, covered in mud and exhaustion, the professional facade would crumble. They were fathers, mothers, brothers, and sisters. The rescuers could hear Patricia's voice, and sometimes Edward's. They knew the children's names, and the children's fate was tied to the rescuers' own. The emotional weight of being so close to two children in such peril, of being the only hope, was immense. Many would later speak of the profound sense of responsibility and the crushing heartbreak of each failed attempt. News of the rescue spread far beyond the local community. Media outlets from across the country descended on the site, their cameras and microphones capturing the tense vigil. The story resonated with parents everywhere, tapping into a universal fear. For a time, the nation watched and waited, united in a shared hope for a miracle. Prayer circles were formed, and messages of support poured in from all corners. The tragedy of one family had, for a moment, become the concern of millions. This spotlight added another layer of pressure to the already fraught situation, but it also highlighted the incredible outpouring of human empathy in the face of a crisis. As day turned into night and back into day again, the mood at the command post shifted. The initial frantic energy gave way to a grim, weary determination. The faces of the rescuers grew more strained, the conversations quieter. Patricia and Edward's family's vigil continued, their hope now fragile and battered by the long, silent hours. Yet, no one gave up. The volunteers kept working, the community kept supporting, and the family kept praying. In those desperate hours, the hillside around Nutty Putty Cave became a sacred space, a place where an entire community came together to fight for two small lives, proving that even in the darkest of times, the light of human compassion can shine brightly. After more than 56 long hours of relentless effort, the rescue teams faced the most devastating realization of all. Despite their heroic attempts, Patricia Chelsea's condition was deteriorating rapidly. The constant pressure on Patricia's body, the cold, and the sheer exhaustion had taken their toll. The medical personnel monitoring Patricia through the narrow passage delivered the heartbreaking news. Patricia had passed away. A profound and heavy silence fell over the chaotic rescue site. The frantic race against time was over, and the outcome was the one everyone had feared but refused to accept. The Earth had claimed Patricia Chelsea and cost her life. The decision that followed was agonizing. The rescuers, after consulting with geological experts and Patricia's grieving family, determined that recovering Patricia's body would be impossibly dangerous. The tight passage that had trapped Patricia was unstable, and any further attempts to chip away the rock or forcefully remove Patricia could trigger a collapse, endangering the lives of the rescuers themselves. With the heaviest of hearts, the authorities made the call to end the recovery operation. The cave that had been Patricia's prison would now become Patricia's final resting place. It was a decision born of tragic necessity, a final heartbreaking admission of defeat against the unyielding rock. For Patricia's family, this news was the ultimate blow. Not only had Patricia's family lost their daughter and sister, but they were also denied the closure of a proper burial. Patricia's family's grief was now intertwined with the very geography of the land. Their loss permanently etched into that hillside. Patricia's 6-year-old brother, Edward, would have to carry the weight of that day for the rest of his life. The memory of the wrong turn, the sound of Patricia's voice, and the desperate, lonely journey back to the surface for help that came too late. The community that had rallied with so much hope now shared in Patricia's family's profound sorrow, the collective grief hanging heavy in the Utah air. In the aftermath, the entrance to Nutty Putty Cave was sealed. A large concrete plug was poured into the opening, a permanent barrier to ensure no one would ever suffer the same fate. The cave was officially closed forever. This act was both a memorial and a safety measure. It was a solemn tribute to the young life lost within its depths, and a stark acknowledgement of the dangers that lie hidden beneath the ground. The once popular spot for adventure became a place of quiet remembrance, a tombstone made of an entire hill, marking a tragedy that would forever change the caving community in Utah and beyond. In the weeks and months following the tragedy, a thorough investigation was launched to understand exactly what went wrong. The inquest was not about placing blame but about learning from the heartbreaking event to prevent it from ever happening again. Investigators interviewed every rescuer, studied Patricia and Edward's hand-drawn map, and consulted with expert geologists and cavers. They meticulously pieced together the timeline, from the moment Patricia, the 8-year-old girl, and her 6-year-old brother Edward entered the cave to the final, devastating moments of the rescue attempt. The goal was to identify every failure, every misstep, and every gap in safety knowledge that contributed to the disaster. The investigation highlighted several critical failures. First and foremost was the inadequacy of the informal hand-drawn maps that were popular at the time. These maps created a false sense of security, suggesting the cave was well documented and safe, when, in reality, they omitted countless dangerous and uncharted passages. The inquest revealed that Patricia and Edward had ventured into a section known among a few expert cavers as the Scout Eater, a notoriously tight and hazardous dead-end passage that was deliberately left off most recreational maps. This lack of accurate and widely available information was a primary factor in their fatal wrong turn. The findings led to a series of powerful recommendations aimed at overhauling caving safety. The most significant push was for the creation and distribution of official, surveyed maps by recognized caving organizations, like the National Speleological Society. The incident underscored the need for a clear rating system for caves, distinguishing between those suitable for beginners and those that should only be attempted by experts with specific training and equipment. It became painfully clear that treating all caves as simple recreational sites was a dangerous misconception. The Earth's underground networks are not playgrounds. They are complex and potentially lethal environments. Furthermore, The tragedy sparked a massive educational campaign targeted at youth groups, schools, and the general public. The message was clear. Caving requires more than just a flashlight and a sense of adventure. It demands proper training, reliable equipment, and, most importantly, the rule of the 3 C's. Never cave alone, always carry 3 sources of light, and always tell someone where one is going and when one expects to be back. The story of Patricia and Edward became a powerful, albeit tragic, teaching tool. It was a real-world example of how quickly an adventure can turn into a disaster without proper knowledge and preparation. Their loss became a catalyst for a new era of safety and responsibility in the world of exploration. The heartbreaking story of Patricia, an 8-year-old girl, and her 6-year-old brother Edward in 1986 did not end with the sealing of the cave. Their tragedy left an indelible mark, and its legacy is one of profound and lasting change. The most immediate impact was the dramatic improvement in caving safety protocols. The informal word-of-mouth culture of exploration was replaced by a more structured and safety-conscious approach. Caving groups, known as grottos, strengthened their training programs, emphasizing hazard recognition, rescue techniques, and the critical importance of never pushing beyond one's skill level. Patricia and Edward's story became a mandatory part of safety briefings, a solemn reminder of the stakes involved. Their memory is honored not just in the sealed entrance of the cave, but in the lives that have been saved because of the lessons learned from their loss. Every caver who now checks an official map, packs extra batteries, or decides to turn back from a passage that feels too tight is, in a way, paying respect to Patricia and Edward. The culture of invincible adventure was tempered with a new, healthier culture of respect for the power of the natural world. The incident served as a powerful wake-up call, reminding the entire outdoor community that true exploration is not about conquering nature, but about moving through it with wisdom, humility, and preparation. The legacy also extends to the families and rescuers who were forever changed by those agonizing hours. It highlighted the immense psychological toll that such events take on first responders and brought a greater focus on mental health support for rescue teams. The shared grief forged unbreakable bonds within the community, a somber understanding of life's fragility. The story continues to be told not to frighten people away from the outdoors, but to empower them with the knowledge to explore safely. It teaches a vital lesson, that courage and caution are not opposites, but are 2 essential tools for any true adventurer. Ultimately, the memory of Patricia and Edward is a legacy of protection. Patricia and Edward were 2 bright, adventurous spirits who embarked on a journey from which only one returned. Their tragic end served a greater purpose, becoming a catalyst for a movement that has undoubtedly prevented similar tragedies. Patricia and Edward are remembered not just for how they died, but for the adventurous spirit with which they lived, and their legacy is honored by carrying forward the hard-won knowledge that keeps today's explorers safe, ensuring that the call of the wild can be answered with confidence, respect, and the promise of a safe return home. Patricia and Edward's story is a permanent reminder to prepare, be humble, and always respect the wild. As the final stone was set in place, sealing the entrance to the cave forever, a heavy silence fell over the gathered crowd. In the days that followed the tragedy, the weight of what had happened settled deeply into the hearts of rescuers, families, and the entire local community. For the rescue teams, the cave was no longer just a site of adventure, but a place forever marked by loss. Many struggled with feelings of guilt and helplessness, replaying every decision and every moment, wondering if something more could have been done. Anonymous hands left flowers and notes at the cave's entrance, quiet tributes to Patricia and Edward, and the tireless efforts of those who had tried to save them. The families, shattered by grief, found themselves at the center of an outpouring of support. Neighbors brought meals, local churches held vigils, and strangers sent letters of condolence from across the country. Yet, despite the warmth of community, the absence of Patricia and Edward echoed through empty bedrooms and silent hallways, a pain too deep for words. In the small town, the tragedy became a shared sorrow. Schools paused for moments of silence. Local businesses hung black ribbons in their windows. The story featured on every front page and newscast, sparking conversations in living rooms, classrooms, and around dinner tables about risk, responsibility, and the unpredictability of nature. Even as the days turned to weeks, the community's collective heart remained heavy. But in that sorrow, bonds were strengthened. Rescue workers received counseling and support, and families found solace in each other's company. The tragedy, though devastating, drew people closer, reminding everyone that in the face of loss, compassion and unity are the first steps toward healing. The echoes of that day still linger, shaping how the community remembers, mourns, and moves forward. In the silence left behind, there grew a quiet promise to never forget Patricia and Edward and to always look out for one another. In the weeks that followed the 1986 Utah cave tragedy, the world seemed to stand still for the families, friends, and rescuers left behind, especially those of Patricia and Edward. The initial shock gave way to a relentless ache as search and recovery teams continued their painstaking efforts deep beneath the earth, determined to find Patricia and Edward. Even with the cave sealed, hope lingered, faint and flickering, fueling the determination of those who refused to give up on bringing Patricia and Edward home. Day after day, rescue workers braved darkness and danger, risking their own safety in a race against time and nature. Each attempt was met with new challenges, shifting rocks, narrow passages, and the ever-present weight of uncertainty. Exhaustion etched itself into their faces, but so too did resolve. For many, the mission became personal, a promise to the families of Patricia and Edward waiting above ground, a silent vow not to let tragedy have the final word. Above, the community's response grew stronger with each passing day. Volunteers organized meal trains and fundraisers, while local businesses donated supplies and resources to aid the rescue teams. School children crafted cards of encouragement, taping them to the windows of command centers and rescue vehicles. The town's churches opened their doors around the clock, offering a place for prayer, reflection, and the comfort of shared sorrow. As the story unfolded, media vans lined the quiet streets, their satellite dishes reaching skyward. News crews broadcast updates around the clock, their coverage bringing the tragedy into homes across the nation. Reporters interviewed rescuers and family members, their voices trembling with the weight of the moment, especially when speaking of Patricia and Edward. For the families of Patricia and Edward, the constant attention was both a lifeline and a burden, each new headline a reminder of their private pain made public. In those long, uncertain weeks, grief and hope mingled in the air. Candlelight vigils illuminated the nights, casting gentle light on tear-stained faces. Strangers, moved by the unfolding story, sent letters and donations from every corner of the country. Each gesture, no matter how small, became a thread in the tapestry of support holding the community together. For those at the heart of the tragedy, the days blurred into one another, marked by anxious waiting, whispered prayers, and the quiet strength found in unity. Though the outcome would ultimately bring heartbreak, the weeks after the cave tragedy revealed the depth of compassion, courage, and resilience that could rise from the darkest of times. In the weeks and months that followed, the tragedy at Nutty Putty Cave continued to stir ripples far beyond the town's borders. Memorials sprang up, not just at the cave's sealed entrance, but in parks, schools, and even distant cities, places where the memory of Patricia and Edward could be honored by all who felt the impact. Candles flickered in the night at vigils, while engraved plaques and benches offered quiet places for reflection. The story captured national attention, with news outlets revisiting the events, interviewing rescuers, experts, and grieving families. Documentaries and articles delved into caving safety, the unpredictability of nature, and the resilience of the human spirit. The tragedy reignited debates about adventure tourism and the responsibilities of those who manage such sites. But the most significant changes came in the world of caving itself. Across the country, authorities and caving organizations re-examined their protocols. New regulations were swiftly put in place, stricter access controls, improved mapping, and mandatory safety briefings for all explorers. Some caves were closed to the public, while others introduced guided tours and emergency preparedness measures. For those closest to Patricia and Edward, these changes were bittersweet. They offered a measure of comfort, knowing that others might be spared the same fate. Yet the sense of loss remained, a reminder that progress often comes at a heavy price. Through every memorial, every headline, and every new rule, the legacy of Nutty Putty Cave lived on, shaping a safer future and ensuring that the lessons learned from Patricia and Edward would never be forgotten. Years have passed since the darkness of Nutty Putty Cave claimed its place in history, but its shadow and its light continue to shape lives. In the small communities nearby, the memory of the tragedy still lingers, woven into the fabric of everyday life. Annual memorial hikes and candlelight gatherings bring people together, not only to remember, but to heal. Survivors and rescuers, once haunted by the echoes of that fateful night, have found solace in sharing their stories, transforming pain into purpose. Some have become advocates for cave safety, speaking at schools and outdoor clubs, ensuring that new generations understand the risks and the responsibilities of adventure. The reforms sparked by the tragedy have only strengthened over time. Caving organizations now work closely with local authorities, updating safety standards as technology evolves. Digital mapping and real-time tracking devices are now standard for explorers, while emergency response teams train year-round, ready for whatever challenges the Earth may conceal. In classrooms and community centers, the story of Nutty Putty has become a case study in humility, courage, and the importance of preparation. But perhaps the most profound change is less visible: a quiet resilience, a determination to move forward without forgetting Patricia and Edward. Families who lost Patricia and Edward have established scholarships and support funds, turning sorrow into opportunity for others. Children who once played near the cave have grown up with a deeper respect for nature's mysteries. The legacy of Nutty Putty Cave is not just a warning etched in stone, but a testament to the enduring power of community, compassion, and hope. In the years since, the landscape has changed, but the lessons remain, guiding hands, lighting paths, and reminding everyone that even in the deepest darkness, the human spirit endures. Decades have now passed since Nutty Putty Cave closed its mouth to the world, but the story it holds continues to echo far beyond the silent tunnels. Across the country, memorial plaques and interpretive signs mark not only the site itself, but also museums, parks, and learning centers, reminders etched in bronze and stone of the risks and reverence owed to the underground realm. Every few years, communities gather for anniversary vigils, their candles flickering in the night, each flame a tribute to those whose lives were forever changed. The tragedy has become a touchstone in the culture of cave exploration. Seasoned spelunkers and new adventurers alike pause to reflect before each descent, sharing stories of Nutty Putty as a rite of passage, a sobering reminder that courage and caution must walk hand in hand. Training manuals now open with the lessons learned here, and cave rescue teams around the world cite the event as a catalyst for innovation, unity, and relentless preparedness. In documentaries, podcasts, and books, Nutty Putty's story is retold, not as a tale of loss alone, but as a chapter in the ongoing dialogue between humanity and the unknown. Each retelling serves to educate, to warn, and to inspire a deeper respect for the Earth's hidden wonders. For the families and rescuers, time has softened the sharpest edges of grief, but the memories remain vivid, a source of both sorrow and pride. Scholarships in Patricia and Edward's names continue to fund dreams and fuel futures, ensuring that the legacy of Nutty Putty is one of hope as well as caution. In the decades since, the cave's silent depths have become a symbol, a place where memory, meaning, and the spirit of exploration converge. And as new generations set out to explore the mysteries beneath their feet, they do so guided by the hard-won wisdom of those who came before, honoring the past and shaping a safer, more mindful future. Today, the story of Nutty Putty Cave remains alive, not just as a memory, but as a living force shaping the present. Every year, on the anniversary of the 1986 Utah cave tragedy, families, friends, and members of the caving community gather at the site and at local community centers for a day of remembrance. These events blend moments of silence with heartfelt speeches, candlelit walks, and the sharing of personal stories. For many, it's a time to honor loved ones like Patricia and Edward, and celebrate the courage of rescuers, reminding all who attend of the delicate balance between adventure and safety. Beyond these gatherings, educational efforts have blossomed. Schools across Utah and beyond incorporate the Nutty Putty story and the memories of Patricia and Edward into their science and outdoor safety curricula. Interactive workshops teach students about cave geology, rescue techniques, and the importance of preparation and teamwork. Instructors emphasize that exploration is a privilege, one that demands respect for both nature and one another. Cave safety initiatives inspired by the tragedy have become standard practice. Modern caving groups require rigorous training, and new technologies, like real-time communication devices and advanced mapping tools, are now commonplace. The lessons learned from Nutty Putty and from the loss of Patricia and Edward are not just remembered, they are lived every day by those who venture underground. The legacy of the 1986 tragedy continues to shape attitudes worldwide. Cave entrances across the globe display plaques and information boards, urging caution and respect. Online communities share safety checklists and host forums where experienced spelunkers mentor newcomers, ensuring that the mistakes of the past are not repeated. As dusk falls on each anniversary, the soft glow of candles and the quiet voices of remembrance echo through the hills. The memory of Nutty Putty Cave, and of Patricia and Edward, is not confined to the past. It is woven into the fabric of present-day exploration, a guiding light for all who seek to discover the mysteries beneath the earth, and a promise that those who were lost will never be forgotten.